Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Trade the Chain. It is Friday, November 20th, and it has been quite the week. Today, we're obviously going to go over the big boards, Bitcoin. We did a midweek episode. This is going to see what's happened from then to today. Bitcoin is just now again tearing it up. Looks like we have around an 18,590 price as we go into taping this. So that's really cool. We have our hot or not list this week. On the hot list, we have Yearn. YFI is the ticker. We're going to see what's been going on with that. DeFi's had some action, both positive and negative over the last month or so. And we also have Litecoin, ticker's LTC. Have not heard or spoken about that before in the show. And quite frankly, hadn't even brought that up in my head outside the show lately. Our not list, we're going into Decentraland, Mana, as well as Voyager, ticker VGX. Steve Ehrlich over there, Voyager's a good friend of ours. I hope he doesn't watch this, but it has just taken a minor dip in what we like to translate into a buying opportunity. Also, we have our news from Ryan today, which is going to be around BlackRock's CIO, Chief Investment Officer, talking very positively about Bitcoin and how it relates to the adaptation in the future. So we're excited to get to that as well. But first, we're going to do our shameless plugs. To tradethechain.com. If you, we just actually got off our first weekly tradethechain.com AMA with the community over there to go through, answer some questions on the technical stuff on the dashboard and how things work, as well as kind of give an overview of some of how we're trading off of those signals. So Ryan and I spent over an hour doing that AMA. Great turnout. Folks, take a look and head on over to tradethechain.com if you haven't yet. It might be a good fit for you if you're an active crypto trader. And then, of course, we have CJ and Monty, our two crypto analysts. They are from marketrebellion.com, and they're basically leading the charge on their new crypto service that came out. And so, CJ, explain a little on how the first 2 weeks of launch have gone with that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people in the chat coming on in, and we're making friends and a lot of interesting questions. We've had a lot of people who have come in from our options community, and some of these guys are a little bit larger players and have been in the options world a long time. And they come into crypto and are kind of new, so it's been really enjoyable to be able to bridge the gap between that. But yeah, we've also got a lot of products and services in this particular product. For instance, we have a macro portfolio, a couple assets. You can check out the allocations and the rationales behind those in our service. We also provide weekly trade insights and webinars where you can interact and ask Monty and I questions directly. You can sign up at marketrebellion.com and go to the crypto section. You can sign up today for just $1. And yeah, we encourage you to do that and to come in the chat and check things out and ask us questions. So please do that and go over to marketrebellion.com in the crypto section.
Perfect. Yeah, and folks, as you'll see, when we go through our technical analysis with CJ and Monty during these episodes, you'll notice those are directly, you'll see a lot of Market Rebellion branding on it because they're using their own interface to explain away some of the price actions that we talk about in this show. So definitely check them out, marketrebellion.com. And okay, CJ, Monty, let's go to the big board, see what's been happening in this exciting week, because my portfolio keeps sending me alerts and they're all positive.
Yeah, always good. We are having some technical issues though. I think it says host needs to disable screen sharing.
Enable it. That's why people, you don't put me in charge.
Yeah, I know CJ's been really excited about this volatility. When we were talking on Wednesday, I mean, you're talking about the sequential and how there was volatility coming. We weren't sure if it was going to be upside or downside, but the volatility's here, and I'm very glad it was to the upside.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the way it was working with the price action movement. Okay, there's tradethechain.com.
There we go.
There's our coin screener. There's market rebellion.
Run through the list.
Yeah. All right.
Beautiful chart.
I actually am going to go over to TradingView for the last time because we're building the sequential indicator. Our developers are building it in as we speak. So the platform's temporarily does not have that. But if we go over to TradingView, we can see that it was very interesting that we were hitting a 9 yesterday. And what we talked about on Wednesday was that that was likely going to be an indication for catalytic price action in one direction or another. We had a doji candle on that 9, and then right soon afterwards, we had a lot of bullish price action. It was looking more like we were going to see continued bullish price action because like if you kind of compare it with this 9, they were both in bullish formations in the sense that they closed up at the end of the day. And so, we were either going to make a close run towards all-time highs, or I thought we were going to see a lot of that open interest from options traders on Bitcoin sell off drastically. So now we've kind of seen the former where we're going back, and now we're only 6 or 7% away from previous all-time highs. And price action such as that is nothing in Bitcoin. That could happen in just a day or over an Asian session. So very interesting price action. We still have to see how long the trend's going to continue for, because you never know how high bubbles can go. The 9 is warning us that we may be near the end of this run. Our current support levels that are the most strongest are 15,800 and 16,400. So we look at those levels for critical support. But as of now, if you're holding, not really a concrete reason to sell, because the 9 is warning you, but the pullback has not begun to initiate just yet.
What do you think is causing the traders to bounce repeatedly off the high 18,000 range and not push through to that 19,000 level?
I think there's a lot of factors at play here, but I think one of the things that is probably causing Bitcoin to, it's obviously ripping up, but I think one thing that's kind of slowing down the upside is the amount of capital we've seen flow into altcoins today. So I think that may actually be the most exciting thing about the week, is how it kind of seems like altcoin mania is regaining a little bit of traction here. But yeah, I think that may be kind of one aspect that is holding Bitcoin back. But I just want to quickly touch on just how the technicals and the fundamentals really came together nicely here, because we were talking a lot. CJ was talking on Wednesday about how a 9 isn't necessarily indicative of a reversal, but it is indicative of incoming volatility. And that's why you need to really take into consideration the feel of the overall market, because when the market is trading with such a bullish bias, you can kind of expect that when that 9 hits, it's going to be kind of upward volatility. So it was good to see the technicals and the fundamentals come together. But like CJ mentioned, a 9 is still sometimes indicative of a reversal, and it doesn't always happen immediately. So for me, I think Bitcoin is kind of in a no trade zone right now. But yeah, like CJ said, we're just a few percentage points off all-time highs. And once we hit that, the sky really is the limit.
Hey, CJ, are you able to show us some volume correlated with the candles?
Yeah, sure.
So Monty, are you saying no trade zone, not feeling the shorts at all either? Kind of see where it goes for the next little bit?
Yeah. And it's really interesting to me, because we were talking about this, I think, last week, about how it's great to see Bitcoin throttling up, but what was lacking was that interest in altcoins. And I think that's kind of indicative of how this rally up to 18,000 was largely caused by institutional, quote unquote, smart money. And I think the retail interest typically is when they're trying to get in, they'll look at these other lower priced altcoins. Like CJ was mentioning before we started this show, he was talking about how in 2017, one of my friends is like, hey, what do you think about Litecoin? He would have never thought about Litecoin until Bitcoin hit 17K. And he's like, oh, it might be too late to hop on that train, but there's there's other trains leaving the station as well. So I feel like that's kind of the point we're hitting now. So it's really exciting to see some positive price action for these altcoins.
And
I think
sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I think that's a great point, though. When talking about how this rally has been supported and where it came from, the retail FOMO trade hasn't really even occurred yet, and you have all of these on-ramps that have just come online in the past year from PayPal, Cash App, and other exchanges, like Voyager and eToro, even, that are rapidly gaining approvals to operate in a number of states and provide this easy access to Bitcoin. I mean, it's only a matter of time until there's a lot more retail interest, and that really feels like a moment where we hit velocity, and we just, as you guys were saying, once we pass 19,000, the sky's the limit, and that can't be too far off. Like, we're starting to get articles in Bloomberg, all the crypto terms you need to know, that came out yesterday, and that's usually a very bullish sign for how the market's going to perform into the future. Now, I mean, how far off do you think this retail money might be?
That's a very good question. Whether it's Bitcoin hitting all-time highs, whether it's seeing incredible volatility in the DeFi market, or opportunities in these quote-unquote exotic assets, similar to what we saw in 2017 with the ICO bubble, or the altcoins. Like Monty mentioned earlier, the reason why his friend was likely asking about altcoin is like Litecoin, was because Bitcoin looks a little expensive. It's already gone up 1,000%. Maybe I should get something that's a little bit cheaper. What's this XRP? What's this Litecoin? And those assets absolutely exploded as soon as Bitcoin started like stagnating and forming these consolidations. The bull trend kept going with Bitcoin in 2017, but it took a little bit longer for those altcoins to catch up due to the retail money coming in. And unfortunately, the retail money has a tendency of always coming in last. So it's going to be hard to pinpoint when it comes in, but I have a feeling when it comes in, it's going to be very, very drastic and extreme.
Yeah, and that's to Ryan's point with velocity. That's what I was noticing with the volume to candle comparison, is that it's been relatively steady and consistent. So there hasn't been a lot of hype volume. Now you look at the volume over there at the recovery of the of March, right? You see two large spikes, one directly after the March dip, and one going into the havoc. To me, that's an indication of retail money flooding in on a FOMO opportunity buy, whereas when you have a consistency, or more or less of a consistency of volume on a day-over-day basis, that is actual money that is doing this in a specific way.
However, this is the one thing I want to add to this. Are those traders that we're seeing in all this open interest, all of this consistent buying that you mentioned, is it for short-term or long-term? Because the institutions like MicroStrategy coming in, obviously they're holding for the long-term, and that increases that like buy or sell wall, that certain holding point, whatever you want to call it, that increases. But derivatives traders will always swing the price around when it comes to short-term. So is this driven by traders who will eventually take profit and take price back down to levels such as 14, 13K? We still have to see, but that's a very interesting question, and whoever can answer it correctly will probably make a lot of money.
I mean, from the institutional side, I can say that our fund clients are taking, are a big part of that open interest, but it's all for short-term gains, right? It's all cash and carry type strategies, and they're in it for the short term to make a few points of performance month over month. So, I mean, long term, yeah, I'm sure everybody has a stack of gold under their bed in the form of Bitcoin for the long term, but there's plenty of money out there that's just driving in and out and swing trading. So yeah, no, good questions all around, CJ. Who the heck knows? I mean, we'll only get more clarity on it as time goes on.
I mean, think, Alex, though, about where we're at, and if you look at any classic adoption curve and saturation of Bitcoin versus or against the percentage of population worldwide, with the number of people who actually technically have access to it through their smartphones. I mean, we're not even close yet.
Well,
right?
you were talking to a guy who switched to an iPhone in 2017 from a BlackBerry. I was a little behind the curve on adoption.
I mean, but even those cheaper smartphones, like the Samsung smartphones that people get in like lesser developed countries or in the African continent, where you know, they use text messaging to conduct like microtransactions, they have access to Bitcoin. So many more people have access to Bitcoin now than did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I mean, it's only a matter of time, one would think, until we start to reach that upward trajectory that dwarfs anything even we've seen to date.
Yeah, no, I think it's you know, just to go by the wayside here with an example. You're absolutely right, Ryan. You know, I was at dinner with friends the other day, and the gentleman was like, saw my hat and said, "So, how's that crypto stuff going? And how does it really work? You know, if you don't mind me asking." I was like, "I'll show you." Pulled out the wallet. I bought some Bitcoin, and boom, was done. 30 seconds. I said, "This is how it works," right there. And you can send it or receive it. So I think more people are asking more questions.
Yep.
And I think with this price traveling to the levels it's at, the amount of mentions on CNBC and mainstream media is going to put it in front of enough eyeballs. Ethereum. Now, has Ethereum had anything drastic going on with it in the week? All the talk is about its big brother Bitcoin. So how's the little guy doing?
I don't know if we can call it a little guy at this point.
At $500, Ethereum is not the little guy anymore.
Yeah, so this one was cooler because while we said Bitcoin was on a 9, this one was much shorter on in its life cycle, in the sense that it was only on roughly a green 3. And so when you get that 3 that closes kind of towards the upside, you're ultimately starting the formation of like a bullish consolidation. And so when Bitcoin popped, and like Monty said earlier about how the altcoin money has kind of just seen an increase in flow, Ethereum was right at the core of that and developed a lot of bullish price action. Now, one thing we should understand is that there's very little support to the upside. Even the level of 500 was not strong support because it hasn't been hit since like July 2018. Then the other levels that we have going upward are not up there until like 550 or 80 and then 600. So these are levels that haven't been hit in an extremely long time, which inclines me to believe that they're not very strong levels to begin with. So what we see here is money that is kind of flowing from Bitcoin, from the main primary market into Bitcoin and the altcoins. And one way that we can monitor that is by looking at kind of the total market cap. And as we can see, the total market cap today is up quite a bit, 4% just about, which is a pretty big move.
Wow. Interesting.
Another thing that I think is worth mentioning too, kind of along those lines, is if you take a look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, it has kind of been it's looking like it's set to steadily decline here. So it's hitting that classic 9 that we talked about. It's a very similar formation that we saw to Bitcoin, but it didn't have that spike in the last 24 hours that Bitcoin had. So I think that is largely contributing. Like when its price goes up, you would expect its market cap dominance to go up, but it really hasn't in this case, because I think a lot of the money is flowing into altcoins like Ethereum, predominantly Ethereum. And I think that's reflected in the most recent bullish daily candle.
I think more to that point, users of Trade the Chain would have noticed yesterday during that big pop in Bitcoin that relative tweet volume for Bitcoin was up over 100% at one point. It's up now at 32%, and that's relative to its 30-day moving average. But if you look at Ethereum, you have relative tweet volume up 41%. So right now, more people are talking about Ethereum and a number of other coins on this list that are altcoins than are talking about Bitcoin relative to the average daily conversation. So I think that proves out that point that the retail investors perhaps are looking at some of these altcoins, including Ethereum, as a way to get exposure to the upside that Bitcoin offers.
Look at Polkadot. Look at Polkadot on that screen, Ryan. You got a 176% increase in tweet volume. And, listen, it's only in the new age of crypto when you take social media sentiment and it becomes a freaking trade indicator, right? So, yeah, no, I mean, absolutely right. A lot of this stuff is talkative and event driven, and it's interesting to see the dominance chart. It's interesting to see what Monty is saying about the dominance chart in relativity to that 9 that we're looking at, right? So you have this 9 that can go either way, but you have a dominance chart that is saying, well, listen, there's a chance here we're going to correct, and it's putting all those variables together. That's why you got to go to marketrebellion.com and take some courses so you can learn how to do this stuff. Onto the hot or not list, and this is in direct. This is directly connected to what we've talked about on the big boards here because DeFi is being affected. But our first hot is going to be Yearn Finance. Yearn is ticker YFI. It has, after a short cooling off period with a lot of these DeFi coins, we're seeing some money getting pushed back into these liquidity pools. But with Yearn, we had a decent pop. What are we looking at?
Yeah, this is a really nice looking chart, and a lot of people that we work with have been very excited about Yearn. And I mean, I remember when we were talking about this during its massive drawdown, and we were talking about how a lot of these projects, I mean, when they were first launched, they weren't priced into the market, and it took some time for people to figure out kind of what range this asset should be trading in. And I think for the longest time during that drawdown, people were taking profits out of Yearn that they made during the uptrend and putting it into Bitcoin. And there just wasn't much incentive to invest in this project. But once it did hit that bottom at around 8,000, I mean, there was lots of reason to be bullish on it. I mean, just the formation of that doji candle alone, but also the fact that it was hitting that red 9 and eventually followed up with a massive bull run. But I think this, like you said, Alex, just speaks to the kind of macro shift that we've been talking about here, where as Bitcoin is starting to hit these new highs, we're seeing more interest in these projects that have tremendous upside and have been reaching and have been higher in the past month. I think, I think people are just looking at this as a great money-making opportunity, and it is.
And I think more to that point, this also proves out the idea that, if you think that one asset is too expensive, getting into another asset like, say, ETH, you can be exposed to the upside of Yearn because it's based on an ETH protocol rather than buy Yearn. It's all about the retail trade and them trying to find alternate ways to gain exposure to the upside of some of these more expensive assets.
Yeah, 100%. Folks don't even, you got to understand that just having Ethereum gives you a sort of exposure to the DeFi community. So if you're not ready to get overly complicated in grabbing coins or something like that, Ethereum still has that value add to it. Okay, coin we haven't heard about, excuse me. Coin we haven't heard about or spoken about lately, and that's Litecoin. Ticker's LTC. Litecoin back in the 2017 rise was a darling, so to speak. Made a lot of people money coming from a cheap price to a very overvalued proposition, but now it's on the move again. What's up here?
Silver to Bitcoin's gold, so to speak. That's the narrative that some people, or at least Litecoin bulls, like to embrace. We still don't know if it's entirely there, but human psychology and predicting it and how it will value things is always an interesting game. We're reaching a 9 tomorrow. And as you can see, this is a pretty similar setup to the explosive bullish price action we had in Bitcoin, and would fit that narrative of Bitcoin kind of just stagnating, not doing much these next few days and into the weekend, whereas people are transferring those profits from Bitcoin into Litecoin, maybe some of these other assets. I wouldn't have expected this to occur with Litecoin, because if we look at a lot of the like old traditional assets, and when I say that, I'm just referring to 2017. It's not even that old, but I'm talking about like XRP, Cardano, like all of the darlings and Litecoin, of course, all the darlings from 2017 haven't really been that interesting. What's been more interesting is like Decentraland, Mana, well, same thing, Yearn, all of these DeFi assets, Polkadot that we're talking about, it seems like they are shifting to like the new darlings of the next bull market. Just a little interesting thing there. But interestingly enough, we're getting some bullish price action coming out of Litecoin. It's giving you a warning sign tomorrow, but still a very bullish uptrend.
So you think there's still upside here in terms of Litecoin?
Yeah. Yeah.
$83.
Yeah.
That's,
sorry.
No, $83. I mean, I just had it in my head for the longest time that it was a $35 asset at best, but you know, good luck to them. Let's move over to our not list. CJ just mentioned one of them. It's Decentraland. It's Mana. What's happening here, and why'd you throw it under the bus for the not list?
Well, I mean, look at this. It's just crazy price action that, and this is
volume.
This is a major exchange. So very interesting that we went up about 30% and then wicked down, as you can see, 23% loss in probably less than 3 hours during this daily candle. And then ever since, we just wanted people, or the people holding didn't want any part of it. Evidently, it left kind of a bad taste in their mouth, judging by this negative price action and the red 1 to 8 candle that we've experienced. But as I mentioned before, there are kind of like this new group of darlings coming into the next massive cryptocurrency bull run. And I believe Decentraland and the hype around non-fungible tokens may very well be included in this like group of darlings. And we're bottoming on a red 9. You know, this would be a red 9 candle, but we're getting bullish price action. So it's price flipped to a green 1. And we'll see if the bullish price action continues. But this feels very reminiscent of like what we just talked about, how Yearn was just going down and down, but then it finally bottomed and came back. And I think I see this asset in a similar state, being Mana. You know, it hasn't fully recovered, or if it shows us a very bullish green 2 and then another 3, you know, the next day, that would be very promising that another uptrend would continue and possibly break past these previous highs. We'll have to see, but very interesting asset. Going to keep watching it. You know, one thing that we talked about a lot in our webinars is just like how important it is for altcoins to have an interesting narrative during a bull market. And Decentraland has that. You know, you're buying these weird non-fungible tokens that symbolize a piece of land. Intriguing.
Interesting to say the least. I mean, every day there's something new. I always learn something new. Non-fungible tokens. I'm still in that curve of, but yeah, no, interesting. I mean, listen, the next guy we're going into is Voyager. VGX is a ticker. I'm almost tempted to rename the not list to the buying opportunity list. Here we've had a little correction in it. Ryan was pounding his fist on the table. He's an owner. Yeah, tell us what's going on with our good friends over at Voyager and the VGX action that's happening.
Well, I think this kind of actually speaks to exactly what CJ was just talking about, how it's very important for altcoins to have a narrative. And although VGX does in the form of providing interest to people that trade on their brokerage platform, I think it's just kind of been a bit stagnant since. So like we saw that spike in price when there was news of a merger, but since then, there hasn't really been much happening in terms of fundamental news about the asset itself. So I think that we're just seeing kind of that boredom play out in a slight decline, people taking profits from the run up during the merger. And there's just not too much reason technically or fundamentally to be putting money into this right now. That being said, they do have a lot of stuff in the works, like a desktop platform and They're talking about releasing a debit card with cashback VGX rewards. And that's exactly the utility that I'm talking about that people look for in an altcoin. So I think once there are more announcements around this token, we will see it start to spike up in price. But right now, there's just, like I said, really no reason to buy into it.
That's pretty funny. I bought some a couple days ago. But and speaking to the fundamentals here, we had that massive spike when the token merger was announced, but then people started looking into it and they found out, okay, this token merger, we haven't really seen anything very much like this before in the cryptocurrency space. And the way that it's going to be executed is that it's going to be transferred one-to-one for VGX holders. And it's going to be done through a smart contract, presumably just a button, quick, easy interaction through the app. But, when you think about other smart contracts like the DAO and things that were supposed to work very, very soundly, and they didn't, and led to massive funds, God bless you, Ryan. It didn't work out that well. It didn't work out that well. And who knows, maybe this is scaring people or they're just taking profit off of that recent 30 to 25% increase. Still being said, we'll see. We're on the red 9. It all comes down to retail money and when are they going to come in? So.
Well, let me ask this question. With tokens like VGX, and I equate those to similar breeding grounds such as Cell with Celsius, or CHSB with Swissport. These businesses with their tokens. I mean, how is this? How are they affected fundamentally differently from, let's just say a project? These tokens that are kind of going along with these businesses like Celsius or Voyager?
I think they have more singularity, or they have more independence because they're reliant on that third-party entity such as Voyager or such as Celsius, the lending platform. And I think Yearn Finance and Mana and a lot of those DeFi assets are more reliant on a collective industry. So because of that interesting news around the token merger, Voyager was the only coin pumping this amount in that day. However, with DeFi, we kind of see a consortium of these assets pumping at the same time. So interesting little difference there.
Interesting indeed. We'll look to see how Voyager is, but it is looking more like a buying opportunity as it goes on. Solid company. We love the people there. Ryan, next up, we have, it seems like the news just gets more high profile and mainstream every day. But here we have BlackRock's chief investment officer talking about Bitcoin replacing gold. That's bold words from an organization like BlackRock.
Absolutely. I mean, BlackRock is, the world's largest asset manager. And to have their CIO come out and say gold could be replaced by Bitcoin, and boil it down to crypto being more functional than passing a bar of gold around. I mean, at the end of the day, when you start having the likes of BlackRock coming around, and Ray Dalio was speaking earlier this week saying he may have misunderstood Bitcoin up to this point, and he may need to take another look at it. I think that just goes to show that as more people learn more about Bitcoin, more institutions learn more about Bitcoin, the use case is obvious. It's there. And going back to what I said earlier about the adoption curve, we're so early in that cycle. We're in the top of the first inning as it relates to Bitcoin. So, you have Anthony Scaramucci, Skybridge announcing they want to invest in Bitcoin. You have all these other fund managers, jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, or announcing that they're going to jump on the bandwagon. Institutions are coming around to the idea that Bitcoin, even in small amounts, can help hedge against systemic risk. And, even if a small percentage of holdings in institutional assets, the trillions of dollars that are in institutional assets are allocated to Bitcoin, I mean, that alone will have a massive impact on the price. So, I mean, if you have BlackRock's CIO coming out and saying this, I think it's only a matter of time until they announce a position that they've already taken, or they announce that they will take a position.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you even have the commissioner of the SEC leaving, stepping down, Clayton, and one of the things I read from him back when Bitcoin was not labeled a security is because of the overwhelming thought process that it served as a store of value. And so that's why, it was classified and not as a security. And I think that's just becoming more and more the case here. I mean, it's a hedge against the old guard economy. And that's fine, because the more the price goes up, the more we're all happy, the ones who bought it. And if you haven't bought it, go pick some up. That's financial advice right there. Go pick some up.
I mean, buy Bitcoin, buy a small amount, even if it's only $100 worth, just to learn about it and figure out how it works. And, more to that point that you made, Alex, about the old guard economy and old guard financial system. One of the main points that Rick Ryder made was that, millennials' receptivity to the technology, to cryptocurrency, he said, is real, and that digital payment systems are real. And, they have that native understanding from using all these tokens in video games. It's not that much of a jump for them to buy Bitcoin, especially now that they can do it in PayPal. And now that they can use it to buy a cup of coffee or to pay for, tickets to a game once we're able to actually go to games again, or pay for concert tickets, or whatever it is that millennials spend their money on that I've lost touch with. But
no, you're absolutely right. And we're coming of the age to where these people taking, leading these companies or taking senior positions, we're coming to the age where they grew up on video games, right? As opposed to 5-10 years ago. Listen, I'm 45 years old. I remember bright and clear the day in 1984 when I got the Nintendo with Duck Hunt, all right? Monty's laughing. But I remember that's when, we had a little Ataris and Commodores before that. But when Nintendo hit the scene, 1984, is when this whole thing changed. And I moved into Sega, PlayStation. And then once the internet came along and you were able to connect people and gamify these things, that's really when all this value of trading digital assets in one form or another, whether it was for perks in the game or something, became real. And it almost acted as an incubator for now real life uses. I mean, BlackRock's talking about it. JP Morgan's using the JPM coin to do internal settlements and clearing. A lot has come along, but now these guys who are going to be in these senior leadership roles are going to be ones that grew up with games and video games. And so it's going to become more natural and more natural.
Think about this, right? I pay my rent with PayPal. Like, that's just how I pay my rent at my new place. I can now pay my rent in Bitcoin. I'm not the only one who can do that now. And, if you just slowly allocate small amounts to Bitcoin on a monthly basis, like you would any other portfolio, you could technically not have to pay rent over time if Bitcoin performs as expected once all these investors come in. So,
I just tried to pay my rent with Tomato Coin. They sent it back, but I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities here are endless. You have to use Sardine Coin to pay your rent, Alex. That's the one.
It's all really interesting, and this stuff is great. I think, at some point we got to talk about NFTs a little more. I still haven't wrapped my head around them. I called up my friends at Gemini and said, listen, you guys own one of these exchanges that does NFTs. Try to explain it to me. And a couple of them were like, yeah, I can't really explain it. So I think even the owner operators are still learning it. One thing I will say from last week, folks, is that I said we were going to do a walkthrough of Market Rebellion's new crypto platform sometime midweek. We didn't get to do that because we had a midweek episode of Trade the Chain because of all the exciting Bitcoin news. If Bitcoin does not skyrocket to $1 million, like John McAfee said, by next Wednesday, I'm going to talk the guys here coming in and doing a walkthrough midweek, and that'll be our episode. So very cool, everyone. And we'll see you guys next Friday. Have a great weekend and hodl on or something like that, and enjoy. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.